Kate walked through the gleaming hallways of Diplomatic Academy Station 4, her footsteps echoing in the metallic corridor. The 3 months she had spent on the station felt both like an eternity and merely a moment. She still remembered the day she was selected as the first human to participate in the exchange program with the Zarthian Collective. Only the best and brightest were chosen for this honor, Admiral Penny had told her during the final interview, her stern face softening slightly. With pride, we need someone who can represent humanity with intelligence, compassion, and strength. Kate had nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders like a physical thing. Though only 25, she understood the importance of this mission. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community. The Zarthians, with their 2,000 years of space exploration, regarded Earth with a mixture of curiosity and dismissal. Kate was determined to change that perception. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive rotating wheel that generated artificial gravity through centrifugal force. Kate had studied its specifications for weeks before her arrival, but nothing prepared her for the reality of living among aliens whose civilization made human technology look primitive by comparison. Kate rounded a corner, nearly colliding with Mizari, a Zarthian female whose scales shifted from green to purple in surprise. "Apologies," Kate said, stepping back quickly. She still struggled to read Zarthian body language, though she was improving. No apology needed. "Human Kate." Mizari replied, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Their vertical pupils narrowed, focusing on Kate's face. The Zarthian stood nearly 2 feet taller than Kate, her slender form radiating an elegant strength. "You appear to be in thought. Were you processing data from Professor Silith's lecture?" Kate smiled. The Zarthians always spoke of thinking as processing as if human brains were just organic computers. In a way they were right, but there was so much they didn't understand about humanity. "I was thinking about home," Kate admitted. "Earth must seem very primitive to you." Mizari made a soft chirping sound that Kate had learned was their equivalent of thoughtful consideration. "Your world is young, as are your people, but you advance quickly. Some find it concerning." Kate raised an eyebrow. "Concerning why?" Mizari hesitated, her scales rippling with subtle color changes. That Kate couldn't fully interpret. Species that advance too quickly often destroy themselves before achieving balance. The Zarthian historical archives contain records of 17 civilizations that followed such a path. A chill ran down Kate's spine. 17 civilizations gone. Entire species extinct. The scale of such tragedy was almost impossible to comprehend. Yet she knew humanity had come close to self-destruction more than once. "We nearly did the same," Kate admitted. "But we survived. We learned." Mizari tilted her head. "Perhaps that is why you are here, to learn from those who have achieved balance before." Kate could respond. The station's communication system chimed softly. The gentle melodic tones indicated a non-urgent announcement. "All students, please report to Observation Deck 7 for special astronomical viewing." The voice spoke in perfect standard English, then repeated the message in the musical clicking language of the Zarthians. Mizari gestured toward a nearby transport tube. "We should proceed. The astronomical viewings are often quite educational." Kate nodded and followed her alien classmate. The tube whisked them upward through the station, their bodies lightening momentarily with the rapid acceleration. Kate had been sick the first few times she'd used the transport system, but had since grown accustomed to the sensation. The observation deck was already crowded with students when they arrived. Zarthians of various ages gathered around the massive viewing window that dominated the circular room. The transparent material was not glass, but something far stronger and clearer, that the Zarthians called crystallized vacuum. Professor Zilith stood at the center of the deck, her silver teaching robes shimmering under the soft lighting. She gestured for the students to gather closer. "Today we witness a rare astronomical event," she announced, her voice carrying easily across the room. "A hypernova explosion from the Cygnus region. The light has traveled for 712 years to reach us." Kate moved closer to the window. A gasp escaped her lips as she saw it. a brilliant explosion of light and color against the blackness of space. Even from this unimaginable distance, the dying star outshone everything around. Its colors, Kate had never seen before, danced across the spectrum, some visible only because of the special properties of the observation deck's window. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Mizari, who had moved to stand beside her, made a sound of agreement. The death of a star is perhaps the most visually impressive natural event in the universe. The energy released in a single hypernova could power all Zarthian worlds for 10,000 years. If we could harness it, Kate watched mesmerized as ripples of energy pulsed outward from the dying star. The colors shifted and changed, creating patterns that seemed almost alive. Professor Zelith began explaining the scientific processes behind the hypernova, but Kate found herself thinking about the planets that might have existed around that. Star civilizations perhaps that had been obliterated in an instant when their sun exploded. Would they have known it was coming? Kate wondered, would they have had time to evacuate to leave their home system before destruction came? Or had they perished unaware that their world was about to end? Kate realized that Professor Zelith was now addressing her directly. "Human Kate," the professor said, "the records indicate that your species has limited experience with stellar phenomena. Have you observed such events through your primitive telescopes?" Kate felt a flicker of annoyance at the word primitive, but kept her expression neutral. "We have observed supernovas and other stellar events, yes, though never with such clarity." She gestured toward the hypernova. "Our scientists would be fascinated by this opportunity." Professor Zelith nodded, her 4 eyes blinking in that sequential pattern that Kate found so alien. "Perhaps you would like to record the event for your scientific archives." "Yes, please," Kate said, surprised by the offer. The professor had never shown such consideration before. Professor Zelith gestured to a nearby Zarthian student who approached with a recording device. It looked like a small, crystalline sphere balanced on 3 delicate legs. The student adjusted some settings, then stepped back. The sphere hummed softly and projected a holographic interface. "You may access the controls," Human Kate Professor Zelith said. "This device will capture all spectrums of the event, including those your species cannot naturally perceive." "Thank you," Professor Kate said, genuinely touched by the gesture. She approached the device, carefully studying the holographic controls. The symbols were Zarthian, but she had been studying their written language since her arrival on the station. With some hesitation, she pressed what she hoped was the record button. The sphere glowed brighter, indicating it was now capturing the hypernova in all its spectacular detail. As the students watched the dying star, Professor Zelith continued her lecture, explaining how the different elements created in the star's core were now being scattered across space. Some would eventually form new stars, new planets, perhaps even become part of living beings eons in the future. The cycle of cosmic creation and destruction. Kate thought, the same atoms that made up her body had once been part of stars that exploded billions of years ago. The universe recycled everything, given enough time. When the lecture ended and the students began to disperse, Kate remained by the window watching the hypernova. The recording device continued to capture the event. Professor Zelith approached, standing silently beside her for several minutes. "Your species has an unusual fascination with natural phenomena," the professor finally said. "It is an admirable quality, though sometimes distracting from more practical concerns." Kate smiled slightly. "We see beauty in the universe, Professor, even in destruction." She gestured toward the dying star. "In death there is creation. New possibilities." Professor Zelith made a sound that Kate couldn't interpret, the Zarthian equivalent of a thoughtful hum. "Perhaps you are poetic for a species so young," the professor said. "There may be hope for your kind yet." Coming from the usually critical professor, this was high praise indeed. Kate inclined her head in the formal Zarthian gesture of respect she had learned. "Thank you for allowing me to record this for Earth," Kate said. "Our scientists will study it for years to come." Professor Zelith returned the gesture, though less deeply, as was appropriate for her higher status. We shall see if your species has the capacity to understand what they observe. The professor turned to leave, then paused. Your presence in my class has been less disruptive than anticipated. Human Kate, continue your studies with diligence. With that, the professor departed, leaving Kate alone with the spectacular view and the quietly humming recording device. Kate smiled to herself. For a Zarthian, that was practically a warm embrace. Progress was being made. Slowly, step by step, she was changing perceptions, not just as a student, but as humanity's first true ambassador to an ancient spacefaring civilization. Kate watched the hypernova for a while longer before finally turning away. The universe was vast and full of wonders, most of which humanity had yet to discover. But they would in time. Kate was certain of it, and she would help pave the way. The morning alarm chimed softly in Kate's quarters. She blinked awake, disoriented for a moment by the purple light filtering through her viewport. The Zarthian sun was different from Earth's star, casting an alien glow across the station. Kate sat, pushing aside the lightweight thermal blanket that regulated her body temperature, through the station's night cycle. 4 months into her exchange program, and she still sometimes woke, expecting to see the familiar walls of her apartment in Boston. Instead, she found herself surrounded by the sleek minimalist design of Zarthian architecture. Her quarters were spacious by station standards, though sparsely furnished. The Zarthians believed that excessive possessions clouded the mind. Kate moved to her small food preparation area and activated the synthesizer. She pressed the sequence for coffee and waited while the machine hummed. The liquid that dispensed was not really coffee, but a Zarthian substitute that contained similar stimulants. Kate had grown accustomed to its slightly bitter herbal taste. She sipped the warm drink, gazing out at the purple-tinged landscape of Zarth Prime. Below, the planet was beautiful in its alienness. Great crystalline forests stretched across its southern continent, glittering in the morning light. The northern regions were dominated by vast networks of what looked like coral, but were actually living cities where millions of Zarthians dwelled in harmony with the native ecosystem. Kate had not yet visited the surface, but hoped to before her year on the station was complete. Her communication pad chimed with an incoming message. Kate tapped the screen, and Professor Zelith's face appeared. Human Kate, the professor said, without preamble, I require your assistance with a special project. Please report to Laboratory 12 immediately. Kate straightened, surprised. The professor had never requested her help specifically before. Yes, Professor, she replied. On my way. She quickly dressed in her standard uniform. The blue jumpsuit with the Earth insignia on the shoulder marked her as the sole human representative among thousands of Zarthians. Kate had grown used to the curious stares, but she still felt the weight of responsibility with every interaction. She was not just Kate Addison from Boston, she was humanity to these aliens' laboratory. 12 was located in the station's research wing. Kate made her way through the transport tubes, nodding politely to the Zarthians she passed. Some returned the gesture, particularly the younger students. Others merely stared, their 4 eyes blinking in that unsettling sequential pattern. The laboratory doors slid open as Kate approached, recognizing her biometric signature. The room beyond was filled with equipment she could barely comprehend. Holographic displays showed data streams in the complex written language of the Zarthians. Professor Zilith stood at the center, surrounded by floating 3-dimensional models of what appeared to be DNA strands. Human Kate, the professor said, noticing her arrival. Your promptness is appreciated. Kate approached carefully, avoiding touching any of the sensitive equipment. The models rotated slowly, their double helix structure familiar yet distinctly alien, with additional molecular components Kate had never seen before. What project do you need help with, Professor? She asked. Professor Zilith gestured to the floating models. These are comparative genetic analyses of various intelligent species across known space. The professor manipulated the display, bringing forward 2 models side by side. This is Zarthian DNA, she said, indicating the more complex structure. And this is human. Kate stared at the representation of human genetic code. It looked simpler than the Zarthian model, with fewer attachments and connections. Yet there was something about it that seemed to interest the professor greatly. Our genetics team has been studying the samples you provided upon arrival, the professor continued. We have discovered some anomalies that require clarification. Kate frowned. What kind of anomalies? The professor enlarged a section of the human DNA model. Human genetic structure contains significant redundancies. She explained parts that appear to serve no immediate function. This is inefficient by Zarthian standards. Yet these redundant sections show evidence of rapid mutation rates far exceeding evolutionary norms. Kate nodded, trying to follow the complex scientific concepts. My understanding is that human DNA contains many sequences called junk. DNA left over from our evolutionary past. Professor Zillith made a dismissive gesture. The term junk DNA represents a fundamental misunderstanding of genetic function. These sections are not junk human, Kate. They are potential. They are adaptation waiting to express. Kate moved closer to the display, studying the highlighted sections. The professor seemed genuinely excited, which was rare for a Zarthian. Their species prided themselves on emotional control. Why is this important? She asked. Professor Zillith manipulated the display again, showing a timeline of genetic changes. This is the normal rate of genetic adaptation in intelligent species, she said. A curve appeared showing gradual changes over millions of years. And this, she continued, bringing up another curve, is the human rate. The second curve showed a much steeper progression with sudden jumps at several points in the timeline. Kate stared at the display. That can't be right, she said. Humans evolved over millions of years just like other species. The professor made a sound that Kate had come to recognize as the Zarthian equivalent of a laugh. Your species emerged from basic primates to space travel in an evolutionary eye blink. By comparison, it took the Zarthian species 8 times longer to achieve the same level of development. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. What are you suggesting? Professor? Professor Zillith closed the displays with a gesture. I am not suggesting. Human Kate. I am observing your species possesses unusual genetic adaptability. It may explain many of the behavioral anomalies we have observed in humans. Your capacity for rapid learning, your emotional variability, your tendency toward what we would consider irrational risk. But why am I here? Kate asked. Why show me this? The professor was quiet for a moment, her scales shifting through subtle shades of blue and green colors that Kate had learned indicated deep thought. I believe there is much our species could learn from each other, she said finally. More than simple technological exchange. The genetic adaptability of humans combined with the stability of Zarthian physiology could benefit both our peoples. Kate felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly the kind of scientific cooperation she had hoped for when she joined the exchange program. A chance for humans and Zarthians to grow together, sharing knowledge rather than competing. What do you need from me? She asked. Professor Zillith reopened the displays. The current genetic samples we have are limited. I would like to conduct more comprehensive analyses. With your permission? Of course, Kate nodded. Of course. Would you need more samples from me? Not just from you, the professor said. We would ideally examine samples from a more diverse human population to understand the full scope of your genetic variability. Kate thought for a moment. The request made scientific sense, but she would need approval from Earth authorities before agreeing to anything more extensive. I'll need to consult with my superiors, she said. But I support the research, Professor. Zillith inclined her head in the formal gesture of respect. Most efficient human Kate, she said. Your cooperation advances knowledge for both our species. For the next several hours, Kate assisted the professor inputting data, translating complex genetic terminology between Zarthian scientific language and human understanding. By midday, they had compiled a comprehensive request for additional human genetic samples to be sent to Earth authorities. As they worked, Kate noticed a gradual change in the professor's demeanor. The usual cool detachment gave way to something approaching collegial respect. The professor even asked Kate questions about human scientific methods, acknowledging that despite their technological disadvantages, humans had made remarkable progress in genetic research. When they finally completed the proposal, Professor Zillith saved the data and dismissed the holographic displays. The room seemed emptier without the floating models of DNA spinning in the air. I believe we have accomplished sufficient work for today. Human Kate? The professor said. Kate nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction. She's never treated me as an equal before she thought, this is progress. As Kate turned to leave, Professor Zillith spoke again. Your species puzzles many of my colleagues. She said some fear your rapid development, believing it indicates instability. Others see potential for great scientific advancement. My own assessment remains incomplete. Kate smiled. That sounds like a scientific way of saying you're reserving judgment. The professor made that strange laughing sound again. Perhaps you understand Zarthian, thinking better than expected, Human Kate. You are correct, I have not yet formed a final hypothesis regarding your species. But today has provided valuable data. Kate felt a surge of pride not just for herself, but for humanity. The Zarthians were beginning to see humans as more than primitive newcomers. They were starting to recognize the unique qualities that might make humans valuable allies. I look forward to continuing this research, Professor Kate said. Professor Zillith inclined her head. Likewise, Human Kate, she replied. Then she added something unexpected. You have performed admirably as the sole representative of your species. Many others would have failed under such pressure. The compliment caught Kate by surprise. Thank you, Professor, she said. I try to remember that I'm here to build bridges between our worlds. 5 months into her stay at Diplomatic Academy Station 4, Kate found herself increasingly accepted by her Zarthian peers. The initial cold curiosity had gradually shifted to something resembling respect. Even the more conservative students who had once kept their distance now included her in study groups and mealtime conversations. Kate sat in the communal dining area with a small group of Zarthian females. Their tall, slender forms made Kate feel diminutive in comparison, but she had grown, comfortable with the difference. The station's gravity was slightly higher than Earth standard, requiring Kate to build more muscle mass over time. Her body had adapted, becoming stronger, even as her mind expanded with new knowledge. Talia, one of the students who had once been most dismissive of Kate, placed a bowl of crystallized fruit on the table. This is from my family's orchard on the southern continent, she said. The blue crystal spheres glittered under the dining hall's lights. Humans can safely consume it. I have confirmed with medical. Kate smiled at the gesture. Thank you, Talia, she said, picking up one of the fruits. It felt cool against her fingers with a strange vibration that tickled her skin. She took a careful bite. The taste was unlike anything on Earth, sweet, but with complex undertones that reminded her of cinnamon and something else entirely. Alien. It's delicious, she said truthfully. Talia blinked her 4 eyes in satisfaction. My family has cultivated these trees for 12 generations. The color indicates perfect ripeness. Another student, Misery, leaned forward, her scales shifting to an interested shade of green. Human Kate. We have been discussing your lecture on human emotional bonding. It has generated much debate. Kate nodded, encouraging her to continue. She had recently given a presentation on human relationships, explaining concepts of friendship, family, and romantic love. The Zarthians, with their more logical approach to social structures, had found many human customs confusing. You spoke of human parents continuing to provide resources and protection to offspring well into physical maturity. Mizari said, this seems inefficient, yet you claim it strengthens your species. Kate considered how to explain. Zarthian families operated differently. Children were raised communally, often with limited contact with biological parents. The focus was on producing independent individuals as quickly as possible. Human children need time to develop emotionally, Kate explained. The extended family unit provides security, allowing young humans to learn through observation and experience. Our brains are still developing well into our 20s. Talia made a soft clicking sound of surprise. 20 years to reach full cognitive function. How does your species advance with such developmental delay? Kate smiled. We compensate in other ways. Humans are adaptable, creative. We make intuitive leaps that sometimes bypass logical processes. The Zarthians exchanged glances. their scales rippling with colors that Kate recognized as thoughtful consideration. She had become better at reading their nonverbal cues, though some subtleties still escaped her. "Is this why humans form pair bonds?" Mizari asked. Another student named Lori joined the conversation. "For reproduction, only a brief connection is necessary, yet humans maintain these connections for decades." Kate felt a flush of embarrassment discussing such personal matters, but reminded herself this was cultural exchange. At its most fundamental, human relationships serve multiple purposes, she explained. Reproduction is only one aspect. We form deep emotional connections that provide stability, satisfaction. Meaning Lori tilted her head, her scales shifting to a curious purple. "We have studied human literature. It suggests these pair bonds often fail, causing emotional distress, yet you continue to form them. Is the temporary satisfaction worth the potential pain?" The question struck Kate as profound, revealing how differently the species approached life we believe it is, she said simply. "Most humans would rather risk heartbreak than never love at all. The connections we form with others give our lives meaning, even when they end." The Zarthians considered this. In silence, Kate could almost see them processing the concept, testing it against their logical frameworks. They might never fully understand human emotions, but they were trying. That alone was progress. The conversation shifted to academics as the students discussed an upcoming examination in xenobiology. Kate listened, contributing occasionally, but mostly observing the social dynamics. These young Zarthians represented the future of relations between their species and humanity. They would carry these conversations, these moments of understanding, forward into their careers. Later that day, Kate received a notification on her communication pad. Professor Zillith requested her presence in the research laboratory. The genetic study was proceeding. While Earth had approved limited additional samples and preliminary results were promising, Kate made her way to the lab, curious what new developments had emerged. Professor Zillith was not alone when Kate arrived. A tall Zarthian male stood beside her. His robes were elaborate, indicating high status. The scales along his neck and forehead were a deep iridescent purple, a rare coloration among Zarthians human. "Kate," the professor said, "I present Science Director Voros. He oversees all research initiatives for the Zarthian Science Council." Kate straightened, giving the formal Zarthian greeting she had practiced. "Director," she said, inclining her head at precisely the correct angle. "It is an honor." The science director studied Kate with unnerving intensity, his four eyes seeming to catalog every detail of her appearance. "So this is the human representative," he said, his voice deeper than the female Zarthians. "Professor Zillith speaks highly of your cognitive abilities. Impressive for your species." Kate maintained her composure despite the backhanded compliment. "Thank you, Director. I strive to represent humanity effectively." The director gestured to the laboratory displays where the comparative genetic studies were visible. "The professor informs me you have assisted with this research. Your perspective has proven valuable." Kate glanced at Professor Zillith, surprised by this acknowledgement. "I believe both our species benefit from collaboration," she said carefully. "Indeed," the director agreed, moving to examine the genetic displays. "Your species' genetic adaptability is remarkable. Though concerning in some respects, the rate of mutation suggests unpredictability. Zarthian science values stability, prediction control." Kate recognized the implied criticism. Humans were too unpredictable, too emotional, too quick to change for Zarthian comfort. Yet these same qualities had helped humanity survive and thrive on Earth. "Our adaptability has allowed us to overcome challenges." Director Kate said, "I see change as opportunity, not threat." The director made a sound Kate could not interpret. Perhaps he said, his scales shifting through several colors rapidly. But rapid change often leads to instability, even destruction. We have observed this pattern in many young species. Kate felt a chill at his words. There was something ominous in the way he studied the genetic displays, as if assessing a potential threat rather than a research subject. Professor Zillith seemed to sense the tension. "Our preliminary findings suggest human adaptability could complement Zarthian stability. she said. The director's scales darkened slightly, indicating disagreement or concern. The research continues, he said finally. We shall see what conclusions emerge. He turned his attention fully to Kate Human. Your presence on this station represents a significant experiment in itself, the first extended cultural exchange between our species. The results will inform future policy regarding human-Zarthian relations. Kate nodded, understanding the weight of his words. Her performance here would affect humanity's standing in the galactic community. I hope to demonstrate that humans and Zarthians can work together productively, she said. Despite our differences, we share a curiosity about the universe, a desire to understand and explore. The director considered her words a diplomatic response, he said. Though whether diplomacy will be sufficient remains to be determined. He turned to Professor Zillith. Continue your research, I expect. Regular reports on all findings. With that, he departed, leaving Kate with an uneasy feeling. She turned to Professor Zillith. The director seems concerned about humans. Professor Zillith was quiet for a moment, her scales shifting through subtle colors. Some members of the Science Council view emerging species with caution, she said. Finally, particularly those that advance rapidly. The director is more conservative than most. Kate frowned. What are they afraid of? The professor moved to the genetica, displays adjusting the parameters. Fear is an emotional response. Human Kate, she said. Zarthians exercise caution based on historical data. Species that evolve too quickly often lack the stabilizing mechanisms that prevent self-destructive behaviors. I'd thought about human history, the wars, the environmental damage, the conflicts that had nearly destroyed their civilization. She could not deny that humans had come close to self-annihilation more than once. We have made mistakes, Kate admitted. But we learn from them. We grow. Professor Zillith turned to face her. That remains to be demonstrated, she said. Her tone was not unkind, merely factual. Your presence here, your adaptation to our ways, your performance in your studies, these are all data points. In a larger assessment, Kate felt the weight of responsibility settle even more heavily on her shoulders. She wasn't just a student, she was being evaluated as a representative of her entire species. The future of humanity's place in the galactic community might depend on the impression she made. What can I do to help demonstrate humanity's potential? Kate asked. 6 months into her exchange program, Kate stood in the observation lounge watching a Zarthian transport ship dock with the station. The sleek vessel moved with graceful precision, its crystalline hull catching the light of the nearby sun. Kate had grown accustomed to the alien aesthetics, finding beauty in the mathematical perfection of Zarthian design. The ship's arrival brought a flutter of excitement to her chest. For the first time since she'd come to the station, another human would be joining. Her Admiral Penny had finally approved a second exchange participant, a xenobotanist named Lily, who would study the unique plant life of Zarth Prime. Kate had never met Lily, but the prospect of speaking with another human face-to-face after half a year of isolation filled her with anticipation. Mizari approached, standing beside Kate at the viewport. Her scales today were a calm blue, indicating a relaxed state. You seem eager. Human Kate, she observed. Your biological signs indicate elevated heart rate and increased respiratory function. Kate smiled, no longer surprised by the Zarthian's attention to physiological details. The first human exchange participant was arriving. She explained. Another Earth scientist, Mizari blinked her 4 eyes, in sequence. Ah yes, the plant study specialist Professor Zillith mentioned this addition. The Zarthian Science Council has granted limited access to the southern forest reserves. Kate nodded, feeling a surge of pride. This represented another step forward in human-Zarthian relations. The crystal forests were sacred to Zarthian culture, rarely open to off-worlders. The fact that a human scientist had been granted research access was significant. I look forward to showing her around the station, Kate said. You have adapted well to our environment, Mizari observed. It is logical that you would assist the new human in their adaptation process. The docking procedure completed with a soft vibration that ran through the station's structure. Kate watched, As the airlocks engaged and pressure equalized, soon her fellow human would step through those doors. The first familiar face she'd seen in months. "Do you miss your home world?" Mizari asked suddenly. The question was unusually personal for a Zarthian. Kate considered her answer. Sometimes, she admitted, Earth has many beautiful places. Forests, mountains, oceans. The station is remarkable, but I miss feeling wind on my face. Standing under an open sky, Mizari made a soft clicking sound. Perhaps you would benefit from a visit to the surface. The council has recently approved limited excursions for exchange students. She hesitated, her scales shifting to a thoughtful purple. I could accompany you as cultural guide if you wish. Kate turned to her, surprised and touched by the offer. I'd like that very much. Mizari, thank you. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the airlock doors sliding open. Kate turned her attention to the arrival corridor. Her heart quickened as a human figure emerged from the airlock. Lily was tall for a human woman with dark skin and close-cropped hair. She wore the standard blue jumpsuit of the Earth Exchange program and carried a small travel case. Her eyes widened as she spotted Kate, the only other human among the Zarthian welcome committee. Kate stepped forward, feeling suddenly self-conscious about her appearance. She had adopted some Zarthian customs, wearing her hair in the intricate braided style favored by female Zarthian students. Her uniform had been modified with Zarthian symbols indicating her academic standing and specialization. Would she seem too alien to her fellow human? "Welcome to Diplomatic Academy Station 4, Kate said, extending her hand in the human greeting that felt suddenly unfamiliar. Kate Addison. Lily grasped her hand with a firm shake, her smile wide and genuine. "Kate Addison," she said, her voice warm. "I can't tell you how strange it is to see another human face." After that long journey surrounded by nothing but aliens, Kate noticed Mizari and the other Zarthians watching this exchange with scientific curiosity. Their scales shifted through various colors as they observed the human greeting ritual. "Let me introduce you to my friends," Kate said, gesturing to the Zarthians. "This is Mizari, one of our top xenobiology students. And these are Talia, Lori, and Zara. They have been instrumental in helping me adjust to life on the station." Lily nodded to each Zarthian, carefully mimicking the formal greeting gesture Kate had performed. The Zarthians responded with varying degrees of formality. Kate noted with interest that Mizari gave Lily a deeper nod than protocol required, a sign of respect. Once the formal introductions were complete, Kate offered to show Lily to her quarters. The two humans walked together through the station's curving corridors, Lily staring with undisguised wonder at the alien architecture. "This is incredible," she murmured. "The design, the materials. Nothing like our stations." Kate smiled, remembering her own initial amazement. "Wait until you see the biodomes. The Zarthians have recreated ecosystems from 12 different worlds. You can walk from a desert to a rainforest in minutes." As they walked, Kate found herself studying Lily, seeing the station through fresh eyes again. The curved corridors, the soft purple lighting, the Zarthian script flowing across information panels. All of it had become normal to Kate, but now seemed alien once more. "Your quarters are in the same section as mine," Kate explained as they approached the residential wing. "The Zarthians have modified the environment to better suit human physiology. Gravity, air composition, temperature." Lily glanced at her curiously. "You seem very comfortable here." "Almost like you belong," Kate considered this. "It's been an adjustment," she admitted. "But yes, I have found my place." The Zarthians were cautious at first, even dismissive, but we've built bridges of understanding. I'm part of something important here. The foundation of a relationship between our species that could last centuries. They arrived at Lily's assigned quarters. The door slid open, revealing a space similar to Kate's, though without the personal touches she'd added over the months. A standard sleeping platform, a food synthesizer, a study area with holographic displays, and a private hygiene chamber. "It's bigger than I expected," Lily said, setting down her case. "On the journey here, the Zarthians kept to themselves. I wasn't sure what to expect. They value privacy," Kate explained, "and personal space. They find humans somewhat overwhelming at first, our emotional expressiveness, our constant talking. She smiled, our smell. Lily laughed, and here I showered twice before arrival. Once Lily was settled, they moved to Kate's quarters. Kate, preparing a meal using both Zarthian ingredients and some Earth foods she had carefully rationed over the months. As they ate, Lily shared news from Earth, political developments, scientific breakthroughs, cultural events. Kate absorbed it all hungrily, realizing how disconnected she'd become from her homeworld in turn. She told Lily about her experiences on the station, the breakthrough moment in Professor Zillith's class, the genetic research project, her growing friendships with Zarthian students, the challenges of adapting to an alien perspective on everything from education to personal relationships. You know you're different, Lily said, observing Kate closely. The way you move, the way you speak, even your expressions. You're not quite human, anymore not quite Zarthian, either something in between. Kate frowned, uncertain whether this was a compliment or criticism. Is that bad? Lily shook her head. Not bad, just fascinating. You're a bridge species, Kate. Maybe the first true one. And she grinned. The xenobotanist in me finds that evolutionary development amazing. Later that evening, Kate introduced Lily to her circle of Zarthian friends in the communal study area. The students had prepared a formal welcome ceremony, a gesture that touched Kate deeply. She watched as Lily navigated the complex social rituals she'd taught her, noticing both the mistakes and the moments of genuine connection. Professor Zillith made an appearance, briefly observing the interaction between the two humans, and the Zarthian students. Kate caught the professor's eye, noticing a subtle shift in her scale coloration, something that might have been approval after the ceremony. As the students dispersed, Kate and Lily found themselves alone in the dimly lit study area. Lily turned to Kate, her expression serious. I need to tell you something, she said, lowering her voice. The botanical research is real, but it's not my only purpose here. Admiral Penny sent me to check on you, Kate. Frowned. I send regular reports. The Admiral knows I'm doing well. Lily nodded. There's concern, Kate. Not about your performance. You've exceeded all expectations, but about you. She hesitated. Some people think you've gone native. That's the term they're using, that you've become too integrated, too accepting of Zarthian perspectives. There are concerns about your objectivity. Kate felt a flash of anger. Was this why she'd finally been sent a companion? A spy to assess her loyalty? She kept her voice steady. Why would that be a problem? The entire purpose of this exchange is cultural understanding. Lily sighed. It's complicated. The Zarthians have technologies Earth wants, access to resources, scientific knowledge. Some military advisors see them as potential threats, not partners. They want information, analysis from a human perspective, not a hybrid one. Kate stared at her fellow human, realizing how much had changed in 6 months. When she'd left Earth, she'd been focused on representing humanity, being an ambassador. Now she understood both sides, seeing the strengths and weaknesses of both human and Zarthian approaches. She had indeed become something in between. I'm still human, Kate said. But I've learned to see beyond our limited perspective. The Zarthians are different. Yes, their logic, their caution, their methodical approach to everything. But they've survived for thousands of years while we nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. There are things we can learn from each other. The day of reckoning came without warning. 8 months into Kate's stay on Diplomatic Academy Station, 4 alarms blared throughout the structure. The harsh sound jolted Kate from deep concentration as she worked on translating ancient Zarthian scientific texts. The lights in her quarters shifted to emergency red, and the station's communication system activated attention, all personnel. This is not a drill. The automated voice spoke in multiple languages. Containment breach in research laboratory. 12 quarantine protocols initiated. All students and non-essential personnel report to designated safety zones immediately. Kate felt her heart racing as she grabbed her communication pad. Laboratory 12 was where she and Professor Zillith conducted their genetic research. She tried contacting the professor but received no response. The pad showed only emergency bulletins. Isolation fields activated throughout the research wing, depressurization procedures on standby. A harsh knock at her door. Kate opened it to find Mazzari, her scales pulsing with urgent colors that Kate had never seen before. Human Kate, Mazzari said, her voice tense. We must proceed to Safety Zone 3 immediately. The situation is critical. What's happening? Kate asked as they hurried through the corridors, joining streams of Zarthian students, all moving with practiced precision toward the designated safety areas. Mazzari spoke in short sentences, unusual for the normally measured Zarthian's laboratory breach containment. Failure, possible biological contamination. The details are restricted. They reached Safety Zone 3, a large circular chamber designed to function as an independent unit if separated from the main station. Reinforced walls, emergency life support, systems, food synthesizers, and medical equipment lined the walls. Kate had participated in drills before, but never seen the safety zone fully activated. Talia approached them, her scales a muted gray of concern. The professor, she said quietly. She was in the laboratory when the breach occurred. Kate felt cold fear grip her chest. Is she? We do not know, Talia replied. Station security and emergency response teams are attempting to re-establish contact with the research. Wing. Kate looked around the crowded chamber. At least 100 Zarthian students and several instructors had gathered here, but no Professor Zelith and no Lily. Where was the other human? Kate activated her communication pad again, trying to reach her fellow Earth scientist. The response was immediate but automated. Due to emergency protocols, all non-essential communications are restricted. Please stand by for further information. Mazzari placed a long-fingered hand on Kate's shoulder, a gesture she'd adopted from observing humans. The station emergency protocols are among the most advanced in the galaxy, she said. Her tone suggested she was trying to be reassuring, though Zarthians rarely offered comfort. Your professor and your human companion are likely in other safety zones. Kate nodded, trying to believe this was true. The station's emergency systems would have directed personnel to the nearest safety zone. Lily had been scheduled to visit the biodomes today, on the opposite side of the station. She was probably safe an hour, passed with no new information. The Zarthian students maintained remarkable calm, sitting in small groups, speaking softly, occasionally checking their communication devices. Kate felt her human restlessness growing. She needed to do something to know what was happening. Finally, the safety zone doors opened, admitting Science Director Voros. His elaborate robes had been replaced by a functional emergency uniform. His scales were a dark purple of authority, tinged with red urgency. Students, he announced, his voice carrying across the chamber. The emergency has been contained but not resolved. Laboratory 12 has been sealed and isolated from station systems. The situation remains serious. Kate pushed forward. Director, she called. What about Professor Zelith? Was she injured? The director's 4 eyes focused on Kate. Human Addison, he said. Your concern is noted. Professor Zelith is alive, but remains in the laboratory attempting to address the situation. Relief flooded through Kate, followed immediately by new concern. If the professor remained in the lab, the danger must be significant. What happened? She asked. What was breached? The director seemed to consider whether to answer, his scales shifting through colors Kate recognized as calculation. Finally, he spoke. The genetic research you have been assisting with experienced and unexpected development. A rapid mutation sequence in one of the combined samples. Kate felt a chill. The combined samples were experimental combinations of human and Zarthian genetic material, carefully controlled and contained behind multiple safety fields. The research had been progressing well, with promising applications for medical treatments. I need to help her, Kate said. Professor Zelith needs my assistance. I'm familiar with the research. The director studied her, his expression unreadable by human standards. No one will enter the laboratory until the situation is fully assessed. The risk is unacceptable. A commotion at the door interrupted them. Lily pushed past 2 Zarthian security officers, her normally composed face flushed with exertion. Kate, she called. There you are. Thank goodness. Her eyes took in the scene, focusing on the science director. Kate has to go to the lab, she said immediately. The mutation involves human DNA. She understands the instabilities better than anyone. The director turned his full attention to Lily. You are the plant specialist, he said. How do you know the details of this research? Lily straightened, meeting his four-eyed gaze without flinching. I've reviewed Kate's reports. I'm also trained in xenogenetics. The combination of human and Zarthian DNA creates unique instabilities that your scientists may not recognize. Kate can help. Kate stared at Lily with new understanding. Her fellow human knew far more about the research than she'd revealed. Her role here was clearly more complex than simple botany or evaluation. The director made a sound Kate recognized as Zarthian frustration. The risk is unacceptable. He repeated. Kate stepped forward. Director, with respect, the greater risk is doing nothing. If the mutation continues unchecked, what are the potential consequences? The director was silent for a long moment, his scales darkening. Total containment failure. He finally said, spreading, contamination, possible station evacuation. The words hung in the air. Station evacuation would be catastrophic, not just for the research, but for human-Zarthian relations. The first major cooperative project ending in disaster would set back diplomatic efforts by decades. I volunteer, Kate said firmly. I understand the risks. The director studied her, his compound eyes unblinking. Your species' tendency toward self-endangerment remains puzzling. Human Addison. Kate thought of the lecture she'd given months ago explaining human courage to Professor Zelith. Sometimes we run or hide, but sometimes we stand and fight because we fear something else more than death. I fear the consequences of inaction more than personal risk. Director, she said simply. The director's scales shifted through several colors too quickly for Kate to interpret. Finally, he inclined his head, the minimal gesture of assent. Very well. Human Addison, you will be provided protective equipment and security escort. Laboratory access will be restricted to you alone, as preparations were made. Lily pulled Kate aside. Her expression was grave. You realize what this means? She said softly. If the mutation is as serious as they suggest, this could be interpreted as a human threat. Something in our DNA causing damage. Kate nodded, understanding the political implications all too well. If this goes wrong, it could set back everything we've worked for. Lily gripped her arm. Be careful, Kate, but do what needs to be done. You understand both sides. Better than anyone, you really are the bridge. Within the hour, Kate was sealed into a protective suit designed for biological containment, Zarthian technology far superior to anything available on Earth. The suit adjusted to her body, conforming to human proportions while providing maximum protection. A security team escorted her through deserted corridors toward the research wing. As they approached Laboratory 12, Kate could see the emergency containment fields glowing with purple energy, multiple layers of protection separating the lab from the rest of the station. The security team stopped at the final checkpoint. Beyond this point, all safety guarantees are void, the lead officer said. You proceed at your own risk. Human Addison. Kate nodded, stepping toward the field. The energy rippled as specialized sensors identified her, allowing passage while maintaining containment. She stepped through, feeling a tingling sensation across her skin as the field analyzed every cell of her body. The laboratory beyond was barely recognizable. Equipment had been moved, forming a makeshift containment area in the center of the room. Holographic displays showed rapidly changing data streams. Professor Zillith stood before them, her tall form hunched with fatigue, her scales a dull gray that Kate had never seen before. Professor Kate called Zillith turned, four eyes widening in surprise. Human Kate, she said. The translator in Kate's helmet rendered her voice clearly, though she could hear the strain. You should not be here. The risky volunteered, Kate said, moving closer. What happened? The professor gestured to a sealed container in the center of the containment area. The combined genetic samples exhibited unexpected behavior. Rapid mutation. Accelerated growth patterns beyond all predicted parameters. The containment field nearly failed. Kate approached studying the data streams. The mutation rates were indeed alarming, far beyond anything they had anticipated in their research. What caused? And she asked.